Hey folks, my name is Mo Amir and this is VANCOLOUR, British Columbia's bona fide culture and politics TV talk show. Tonight we have a very special guest to dig into BC politics. What is the legacy of the BC Liberal Party? Is BC Premier David Eby's backtracking on several progressive policies pragmatic leadership or weak leadership? And why do the BC Conservatives spend so much time demonizing Liberals? Here for the entire program to explore all of that, a trusted advisor to business leaders and organizations, and of course, the 35th Premier of British Columbia, serving from 2011 to 2017, Christy Clark. Ms. Clark, what an honor. Thanks so much for being here tonight.
I'm delighted to be with you. Thanks for having me.
So under your leadership, the BC Liberal Party technically never lost an election, right? Including in 2017, you won the most seats.
Can you technically lose an election? Can you technically win an election?
You didn't end up forming government for that next
Yes. So
session.
what happened was we won the election.
Yeah.
We lost the government at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Kind of like could happen to Mark Carney any day, I suppose, right? It's not going to. I'm not predicting that. But yeah. So that's what happened. But I was there for like 6.5 years. And I think we accomplished a lot in the time we were there.
So 2017, you win the election. The BC Liberals win that election. Fast forward 7 years, the BC Liberal Party, now BC United, effectively suspends their campaign. They throw in the towel, they quit. Do you think that was an inevitable reality, or was this a very preventable mistake?
Yes, it was a terrible, catastrophic mistake. I mean, but remember, the way I remember it is the BC Liberals didn't quit. What happened was the BC Liberals elected a leader who had wanted to change the name of the BC Liberal Party forever. So he ran against me. I ran against him for leader in 2010 and 11.
Yeah.
And in his platform was, we're going to change the name. And, I was like, okay, well, that's a legit question. So I ran on, we're going to ask members if they want to change the name. Mm-hmm. We went out and we looked for all the other names, Dogwood Party, you name it, all those other things, right? Couldn't get any of those names. Went to the membership. Brad Bennett, Bill Bennett's son, made a speech and he said, we shouldn't change the name. Mm-hmm. We've won 3 elections on this name. It's a good brand. We should keep it. Members decided to keep the name. But Falcon never gave up on his dream. So when he became leader after me, I should say after Wilkinson, he decided he was going to go back to change the name. And they came up with what I thought was I think it was the name of the soccer team my son played on.
It sounded like a soccer
BC
team
United.
Name. Yeah.
And it just didn't go anywhere. So what they did is they took the BC Liberal name, they took possession of it, they buried it in BC United. And then BC United folded, and we all know what happened after that.
And that was at a time when the Liberal brand federally was not doing that well, sort of that, 2022 to mid 2024 era. But things can change really quickly. And now the federal Liberals are riding sky high, very popular. Mark Carney's very popular. The brand is doing well, while the Conservative brand seems to be sinking a little bit federally. Should there be a BC Liberal Party in British Columbia?
Yes, there should.
Yeah?
Yes, there should.
Okay.
Absolutely. I mean, we won 5 elections on that brand, BC Liberals. It's existed since 1903 in BC. It's one of our oldest political parties. We've had some fantastic premiers like Duff Patella and other Liberal premiers in the past. So yes, it should exist. And the reason it should exist is because the New Democrats in BC are in big number. There's a lot of them, more than any other province. So the only way to make sure that you have a government that, if you're not a New Democrat, that cares about lower taxes and a bigger economy, everybody else has to come under one banner.
Yeah.
And what they did is they really screwed it up. They sent all these federal Liberal voters into kind of this morass of nowhere to go, and stopped welcome. And it's worse than that, Mo, because it's not just that they got rid of the name. It's that they became openly hostile. You see Carolyn Finley out there saying, we don't want any federal Liberals in our party or any BC Liberals in our party.
Yeah.
Come on,
And we'll get into that in a second, but the province's most famous luxury car detailer / parking lot attendant, Kevin Falcon, still holds this name hostage. Like, he's the one that controls it, even though there is a lot of people, former BC Liberals, who want to resuscitate the party, bring it back to its former self and at least work with it. Do you think Kevin Falcon has a moral obligation to let go of control and just let other party loyalists run with it?
I think he does. I think that sitting on someone else's party name is, especially as one as old as that one, I think it's the wrong thing to do. I mean, I think we should kind of let nature take its course, right? Give people more choices. And if at the end of the day, some BC Liberals get elected and then some BC Conservatives get elected, and there's enough of them, they can form government together. And guess when that happened? That's how we got social credit. And, to be fair, they ran a pretty good economy for a long time.
Yeah, interesting. Now, the Conservatives, you kind of alluded to this already, the Conservatives seem to be pulling quite right, especially on social issues. I think there are a lot of centrists who did end up supporting, the John Horgan NDP party and even Premier Eby's party, but they're very disaffected with things like the economy. Where do these voters go in the middle that are somewhat socially liberal, but do want some financial responsibility, accountability in this province?
It's really tough. I mean, and I apologize to anybody who's watching who is a New Democrat and feels really excited about all of this. And I appreciate we need to have people from all sides coming together and fighting, right, in order to make a decision on these things. But I mean, my view of it is the biggest deficit in British Columbia's history. We are probably going to have the biggest credit downgrade in BC's history. We have, under Mr. Eby's predecessor, they made took the civil service from 350,000 people to about 560,000 people. Every one of them gets paid on average $30,000 more. I mean, It's become just this giant monolith that government that kind of chugs along has become completely unaffordable. And nobody knows what to do about it. Like no one in government knows what to do about it. And worse
than that, services are not getting better.
And that's the thing. Yeah, right? Like traffic is worse, street disorder is worse. You can't even stand in line. Nobody has time to wait in line long enough to get into a walk-in clinic. I mean,
I have a
it's
family
really
doctor
tough.
And it takes a month to see them.
You're lucky.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's lucky in this province, right?
Yeah.
But what do these voters do in the meantime? I mean, you have the centrist party being held hostage, two parties that may not be palatable to, that demographic of voters. So where do they go?
Yeah, tough one. I don't have an answer for that yet.
You were supposed to solve that problem.
I know,
tonight.
Well, I mean, my what I say to people, because honestly, Mo, like I have probably 4 or 5 people today just stop me in the street. When are you coming back? Maybe they didn't even vote for me or like me, but they think I'm better now in retrospect, I guess. But I think what we need to do is people who are moderate, who want a strong economy and want healthy schools and want, fairness and justice for people who are, LGBTQ community or feminist, everybody. I think we should all come together and say, we reject all of this talk about a global cabal. We reject this discussion about ostriches and whether or not we should have measles vaccinations. That's not what we're going to talk about in British Columbia. Yeah. We're going to talk about a strong economy that means our kids can live a life in the kind of wealth that we grew up in. Because at the moment, there isn't a chance of that.
Yeah. Well, the people that do talk about it are the leaders of this province. So let's take a quick break and talk about leadership when we're back. Welcome back to This is VANCOLOUR. Is strong leadership about standing firmly on principle or knowing when to pivot as public opinion shifts? That's our entry point tonight as we look at Premier David Eby's leadership and whether the rising culture of political purity tests, especially among Conservatives, actually produces stronger leaders. We're back with our featured guest, former BC Premier Christy Clark. Christy, thanks for sticking around.
I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
So I'm a little concerned with a pattern that Premier David Eby has been demonstrating. He's been rolling back a lot of progressive policies. The BC carbon tax, which was brought in by the BC Liberal Party under Premier Gordon Campbell, decriminalization, which was supposed to be a Vancouver-based pilot project, but the province really rushed to expand it to the rest of British Columbia. And now we see that he's going to roll back a little bit on DRIPA, the Declaration of Rights of Indigenous Peoples Act. There's going to be some sort of amendment which may take some of the teeth out of that legislation. In your view, when you keep backtracking on things that you supposedly support, is that pragmatic leadership or is that unprincipled leadership?
I think it's a little bit of both. I mean, it's hard to say. I mean, I can't see into Premier Eby's mind, but I suspect he really did believe in those things very profoundly. But I think when this happens, I think it suggests that a leader didn't understand how the things that they believed in might or might not work. So it is ideological to think, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to get out there and we're going to decriminalize drugs. And he was all in favor of that for a long time. It didn't work the way anybody had expected it would. And that was becoming clear over the years. And nonetheless, though, he stuck to his guns. And I think that's the mistake, is sticking to your guns. We all make mistakes. We all in politics do things that we regret or say things that we regret. We all have to reverse path sometimes. That's just the way it is. But there has to be a process of listening to people in the meantime, paying attention and being ready to learn and accept that you might have not been always right about something. So to me, it's not the fact that he held those views and now he's changing them. It's really the fact that it took him so long to realize that he was going to need to change them. Because if he was going to get to the path of just getting rid of it, normally there would be some kind of incremental changes along the way. Because if you believe in principle, you try and fix the problem rather than get rid of it.
I would think so. And I think that my issue with decriminalization, let's take that for example, is that there wasn't a lot of consultations with municipalities who had no idea what it was or perhaps didn't want it or were resistant to it, right? So when you talk about listening, I don't think it's just about you roll out the thing and then you listen afterwards. While you're rolling out, before you roll it out, you have to do a lot of listening there. So I feel like there wasn't even an expenditure of political capital to make these things successful. He kind of looked where the polls were, especially with the carbon tax, where he said that, no, we're not going to get rid of it. And then suddenly right before the election, he said, oh yeah, no, we'll get rid of it when the feds do.
Yeah. Which seemed like a crazy knee-jerk thing to do because, okay, we all knew that the feds were probably going to do something about the carbon tax, right?
Yeah.
That was pretty obvious. But so they had time to plan. The thing with that is the carbon tax income was all going to reduce taxes in other areas. Yeah. So small business, big business, personal taxes, all those taxes went down.
Created a big hole in
there was
budget.
There was no budget that came as a result of that. So now we have an historic deficit. Like, it's that kind of governing that I think is the worst kind of governing, because you can change your mind. You take heat for it. Sometimes you make mistakes. You take heat for it. But to go through government and just suddenly take a position and then the next day change it and cause a problem as a result, the size of this deficit is really, really profoundly irresponsible.
The no answer to what now?
Yeah. Right? Like, I mean, you got to kind of roll with it, right? And you and I had this conversation. I think politicians need to spend a lot of time talking to people. Mm-hmm. And it's not just rich people. It's not just business people. It's everybody.
Yeah.
Because you can get a real sense from what's going on. If you talk to enough people in enough different corners of the, street corners every day as you walk to work, you can really get the pulse of people over time. And I'm not sure if that's been David Eby's strong point.
Your government introduced SOGI, sexual orientation and gender identity, in schools. And I think there's a lot of misinformation about what SOGI is. People think it's curriculum, but it's actually resources. The BC Conservatives are really amplifying this backlash as well. Do you think it's in trouble with David Eby, who's shown this history of, backtracking?
I think if David Eby backtracks on that, he's got nothing left. He might as well become. He might as well quit the NDP. I mean, I seriously, like, SOGI was introduced so that we could make sure that vulnerable kids felt like they could be heard when they are in school. That's really vitally important for all kids. And some kids can't talk about it at home. It's not safe for them. I know kids who are now adults for whom this was true. So, I understand there's lots of controversy about these things and it needs to be done right. Mm-hmm. But for heaven's sakes, I mean, if the NDP are going to go down that road, my goodness, I mean, what's the difference between them and the other guys?
Well, let's talk about the other guys, because they seem to be really obsessed with this idea of not being the BC Liberal Party 2.0. Again, forgetting that, the BC Liberal Party won 5 elections in a row. What is with that animus, and what do you make of it when they talk like that and potentially alienate liberal supporters, liberal voters that they will need to actually form government?
Well, and not just liberal voters. I think it's, a lot of people who would have supported a normal kind of not kooky conservative party were people who supported Pierre Poilievre and continue to. But they may be people who also support Mark Carney now, too. I mean, the political lines are really blurring. And what they want is they want a government that's going to focus on economic growth and lower taxes and a better economy and all that stuff. And they look at these guys talking about ostriches and measles vaccinations and they're like, what? Right? Just like, it's just not, it's not normal. So, I say this to people, I've said this to some of the leadership candidates. Look, you have to make sure that what you are presenting to people is something that will bring together a broad coalition of people. That's the only way that the Free Enterprise Party can win. Yeah. So don't get out there and start saying, oh, there's people we don't want. You can't have a purity test in BC politics if you want to defeat the NDP.
You think that purity test culture of I'm the real conservative, I never worked with the BC Liberal Party, do you think that's going to hurt them in the next election cycle?
Yes, of course it is. Yeah. I mean, the only thing that ever puts the Free Enterprise Party over the top is that bunch of federal Liberal voters who live in the suburbs and the city of Vancouver. Right. That's where they are. That's where those votes are. Yeah. And some in Victoria. If they don't get them because they're so far on the right of the political spectrum and so unwelcoming, we will have another 4 years of a government who just gave us the biggest deficit in history and perhaps the biggest credit downgrade in our history. Nobody wants that.
In a minute or less, why do you think the BC Conservatives are like that, though? Why can't they see that? Because I don't think that's groundbreaking news to say that federal Liberals are often the swing voters or the kingmakers in a provincial election.
I think it's the circumstance of history where John Rustad happened to be leading a party of one on the coattails of the biggest election runaway polling that the Conservatives had ever had with Poilievre. And in that moment, he gathered a bunch of people around him who were not middle of the road or right of the road. They're on the side of the road. And it just sort of, that's how the whole thing got started and seeded. And now we see the garden that's grown from that. And it's not a winning formula.
Yeah. So victims of their own hype, basically.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Okay. Well, we have to take one more break. But once we're back, I want to talk about your legacy. Welcome back to This is VANCOLOUR. We're back with our guest tonight, the 35th Premier of British Columbia, Christy Clark. You didn't leave on me. You didn't bail.
This has been fun.
It has been fun, and I appreciate your time. I'm really curious. A lot has been said about you while you were Premier. A lot has been said about you since you've been Premier. As potentially the last BC Liberal Premier, what do you think people get wrong about your legacy and your time as Premier?
I think people look at it and think, wow, all she cared about was the economy. And, I guess you could take that as a compliment. But I think when people say that, what they mean is we didn't care about healthcare, we didn't care about education, we didn't care about all those other things. But the reason we wanted a strong economy is because that's how you pay for all those other things. I mean, and that's how people can look after themselves also and their families and be healthy, is having a bigger income, lower taxes, keep more of it at home. I mean, functioning families, functioning communities really depend on jobs. And so I always sort of thought of it as, if you can get the economy really firing on all cylinders, and we did, we had the strongest economy in Canada for a while, you can make sure that you have all the money that you need to look after all those other things.
Now, I know, and you actually just alluded to this, that you've spoken to some BC Conservative leadership candidates. In speaking to them, do you ever feel the pull to get back in there and go, you know what? I'm just going to do this myself.
Well, I don't know if there's an opportunity, Mo. I just going to say, I don't know if I can go back. That's the thing.
Your name gets tossed around, in all these electoral issues all the time. So do you feel the pull?
I don't think you can go back. I don't think you can go backward. It's like going back to it's like remarrying your ex-husband. People think it's weird. Some people do it and they're happily married ever after a second time. But I think it's time for someone new, someone fresh. I just hope we can find the right candidate who can unite everybody who cares about economic growth, like somebody who can really instill confidence and not someone who's an exclusivist who says, well, there's only one kind of people I want in my party. We need to have a party of people who is everybody that cares about economic growth, balancing the budget, creating jobs, making BC investable again. That's what we need to do. And I don't care who it is if they can win.
I have to ask this question really quickly, though. Does that candidate exist in the current field of the BC Conservative leadership race?
You know, and it's not clear yet. I mean, we'll have to see what they start saying when they're in the race. We'll have to see how they decide to deal with it. I mean, look, they've got to win their leadership, right? Mm-hmm. That means they're inside their party. There probably aren't a lot of former BC Liberals signing up. I don't know what they're going to say to try to appeal to their own membership, but I sure hope that it's a broad-based message, because if it isn't, whoever the leader they choose is going to go into the general election having said a lot of things that will mean that they alienate the voters they need to get elected.
If you see someone you like, would you dispense an endorsement?
I would.
Really?
Absolutely I would. Oh. Absolutely I would.
You got the entire BC political world holding their breath now.
Well, let's see how this goes. And if there's somebody great that emerges who I think can win the election, because that's what I care about, is making sure we don't have an NDP government again, then if that person emerges, I will absolutely get behind them.
Christy, I appreciate your time tonight. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Folks, that is our show. So much gratitude to the former Premier of British Columbia, Christy Clark, for joining us tonight. If there's someone in BC politics that you would like to see on the program, please email me, mo@thisisvancolour.com, and let me know what you thought about our chat tonight. Plus, please find me and all my hot takes on the socials @VanColour. We're back next week, but until then, stay colorful, friends. Peace.